If you're on the wrong tire, you're fucked. If you're overheating the tire, you're fucked. If you've got no thread left, you're fucked.
Hello and welcome back to Rally DNA for episode 8 of season 2. I'm Killian Cronin and joined as ever by Jamie Arkle. How are you doing, Jamie?
Superb, thanks, Killian. Superb.
Good stuff. And this week we welcome back our very first guest, Richard Browne. Remember him? Richard is going to guide us through the ins and outs of what goes on during a WRC pre-event test. Welcome back, Richard. How are you doing? And congratulations on the recent World Rallycross success with the Polo RX-1E.
Yeah, thanks very much, and thanks for having me back. Like I said, I'm surprised that anyone has wanted me back on again, but maybe I'm the only one answering my phone.
I've got lots of unread emails that are being sent and not answered.
Yeah, exactly. Maybe all the other engineers are flat out still testing for Japan, or yeah.
We've
ran out of ideas and guests very quickly, less than a year in.
It's that scene from the opening of Father Ted where you're the first we called.
Yeah. No, but when you reached out and started to talk about the topic of pre-event testing, it's a really good one because, and like you said, it's probably not spoke about that much, not covered that much.
Mm-hmm.
And it has evolved massively, from what it was, let's say, before my time in the sport. What we started to get into a time where testing days was controlled by the FIA, so you had to be really, really, I guess, planning wise, you had to be quite strategic with how you use those days and how you saved some days for, emergency testing that you needed to do because you discovered a problem mid-season. If you think about that, and the days have gone reduced more and more and more. It's got interesting, I guess. The most recent stuff is, since Toyota set up in Finland with quite a strategic base there, where basically their rollout for their cars is already on, maybe smooth gravel wise, some of the best roads in the world, and then of course half of the year they also have some snow there as well. So it's quite strategic wise. That was quite a good move. And you see Hyundai have now nominated their test base in Finland also. So if you picture that now and go back to the other extreme, which was the Safari days, where the team of mechanics and drivers and helicopters and everything would go there, and they go for a month testing, and they would basically try to find the strongest car possible, and they would go there with maybe 5 different types of top mounts and 20 different types of dampers and all the tires in the world.
And Toyota even had a workshop out in Kenya, didn't they, at one point, which Oda didn't purchase actually later on.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So it has evolved a lot, and I think with Toyota, the Safari was really important to them. So they put, they became the benchmark for this rally and how to approach it. And we saw, I think, actually, again, we saw just recently where Toyota were again the benchmark. It looks like they did their homework. I saw some clever ideas like a small little handheld vacuum to clean out the airbox. I assume an air filter is quite light and cheap, so you'll bring a new one of those, but the airbox can still be completely full, so of this very fine fresh. So saw some pictures of them vacuuming out their own airboxes, which is
Yeah.
quite clever. And that's part of the preparation, I think, as well. Thinking outside the box and being more prepared than the other team. All those things help you to, first of all, get to the finish on a rally like that, but also give you the edge.
This is it. So I suppose we'll start with the easy one then, Richard. Why do a pre-event test to begin with? I mean, it sounds like it's maybe an obvious one, but maybe there's more nuance to that. Considering you've got a lot of data from existing events, why not call it quits and go, well, we know what to expect from Rally Catalonia, so why do we need to test from it?
I would break it up maybe into some subcategories, because you have. Let's talk about it from not just a professional level, like we can also do it from a Clubman level. And like from the Clubman level, you would do a test maybe for two different reasons. So like a pre-event test normally to, clean off the rust and get back up to speed a little bit again with the speed, the cornering, the feeling of the brakes. It's also a small rollout or shakedown from the car because it's had a rebuild or a reprep from the last event. You could also do one, because it's a new car, it's a brand new car, or it's a new to the customer car. And there's some very important reasons to do that, is to have a sound understanding of the controls if it's a new car to that driver. Launch control, handbrake, etc. They're, some of the big time losses. If you stall on the start line, by 5 or 10 seconds straight away, you have to drive like a demon to get that back quickly. And it's the same with, stalling at a bale chicane with the handbrake and things. Those two things alone, they're the things they should be practicing. The clutches these days now, they can take multiple launches. You don't need to. You can do a test and you can then do your rally, as long as the driver's not abusing the clutch too much. It's not a big deal. And then from a pre-event test, let's say on a Clubman level, if it was me that was running the test, like we did in Prodrive, for sure, the more mileage, the better, because the drivers, they're not professional drivers. They're doing it as a hobby, or they're doing it for the fun, or, they're doing it for whatever reason. But to get them up to speed, it's really all about the mileage. And then while you're doing the mileage, you can explore some small setup changes to help them get comfortable with the car, make the car a little bit easier for them to drive. You build up a picture of what the driver is looking for, how he can be fast. And then also, the usual story of tires. How many times do we hear on a national rally or in Clubman rally that, that someone's on the wrong tire? And it can be not getting the weather right, of course, but it can also be just not understanding your tire, that you go too aggressive with the tire and you can't get enough temperature into it on the road section beforehand. So you start off on the back foot, and then the first 2-3 kilometers of the stage is quite fast, so you don't get any temperature into it. And then then the confidence is done. So that, I think, I always lean on the safer side of the of the tire choice, especially on Clubman level, because I would rather have a driver complaining to me that he lost 20 seconds in the last 3 kilometers because the tire went off. But the reality is, they don't ever lose as much as they think. They just drive accordingly because the tire is overheated. But they have gained from the very beginning of the stage all the way until maybe 80, 85, 90% of the stage. So for me, that sounds like the right tire for the stage. Maybe you need to manage the pressures a bit better, but sounds like at least it's the right tire. But yeah, for sure anyone can get the weather wrong, or depending on how many apps you've got open on all your iPhones and your Samsung phones, you have to take a bit of a gamble sometimes, but to have a good understanding of your tire is really, really critical. And I really emphasize that a lot. It's so many times that you can be having a good rally or leading a rally and you can throw it all away, and you make your life much harder than it needs to be. And it's stressful as well, the tire choice, and if you don't have the information, it's really, it's difficult then, it's just, until you see the time at the end of the stage, or if you're lucky enough to have some sector time or split times, that's even better. But yeah, if you leave on a tire that you think is wrong, it's a long time before the car comes back. So that's like from the Clubman level. Of course, you can, let's take it from the simpler approach from an R5 car. You're only allowed 6 homologated roll bars. So whether it's 2 front and 4 rear like the Polo, or 3 and 3 like other cars. So let's say you have some roll bars on the truck, you have some springs on the truck, you can go 1 step up or 1 step down, and you have your dampers, and you just start to explore a little bit and get the driver, make a change, and get him to come back and report what the change was. Was it big or small for him? And if you know from your calculations that, putting the next step roll bar on is a huge step in stiffness, and there's no overlap between the roll bar you took off and the one you put on, and the driver comes back quite happy, then you're already knowing that he's let's say quite an aggressive driver that likes a stiff car, and he starts to respond to it. So you already start to build up a picture of what your driver is looking for as well. So the Clubman level, I don't say it's simpler, but it has different targets, and a lot of it is mileage, a lot of it is understanding your tires, number one, and then your car, number two. On Clubman level, they're only doing maybe 4 to 6 rallies a year, and they need to maximize the result that they have and want to have as much fun as possible during that time. So that's also part of it too. You don't need to make it too stressful and have a 300-kilometer test planned out for him for the day. That's usually not in the budget either.
Yeah.
Sometimes they say we have a 50-kilometer test, and you're lucky that you have 100 kilometers. And 50-kilometer test, you can't do a lot in, to be honest. By the time they warm up the car and come back and get your tire pressures up and checked and everything else, you don't have a lot left then. So you need to be wise with what you're testing, and then it would come down to a little bit more what the rally that you're going to do and your test road. And we'll probably get much deeper into that when we look at the testing on a professional level.
And when you were with, say, and back to stick with kind of a customer level and kind of Clubman, not necessarily Clubman, but when you were, say, working with Prodrive's customer base, what was typically the length of a mileage on a test that you would say do with the Subarus back in the day?
If it was a lot of the Subarus were owner owned, like the R5 market is a little bit different, where the cars are team owned and they rent them out for the weekend. And a lot of the Subarus are personally owned, but the Subarus were S10, S11 was 1,000 kilometers warranty on all the components, and then because the S12 engine was a bit more aggressive, that was dropped, I think, to 750 for engine and turbo, or engine at least. I don't remember. I don't recall about whether the turbo was in there or not. So they were careful with their mileage. And the rallies were big enough in those days. They were easily 220 kilometers, I think.
Yeah.
You did a proper day on Saturday and a proper day on Sunday.
Yeah.
So 50 to 80 kilometers, I would say, is about normal back then. It wasn't a lot, for the driver to get up to speed. It depended on the driver too, I think, a lot of it.
I guess, yeah.
Yeah, and then I remember maybe Kevin Lynch, for example, he was doing a lot of testing then, really a lot of testing. He was maybe one of the first ones when I was with Prodrive that you heard that were really hammering in the miles, before events and stuff like that. They were just driving, and it paid off because they were fast out of the box, and the others were left catching up. And a lot of it is that I think the car is so capable, you can't get up to speed if you're only in the car 4 to 6 times a year. You can't get up to speed so quickly because those cars in particular, they weren't easy to drive. They were ferocious torque, and they had a lot of systems. They weren't so easy to understand either, because you had active differentials in that time, and there were a lot of the work was being done for you, but that doesn't mean they were easy to understand and to drive, and predictable. But yeah, it wasn't a lot. For us, it was a very valuable system check because the cars were, a little bit more fragile and needed a bit more maintenance. So we have got a really good data check, beforehand, and then you got some time between the test and the rally to go through your data and make sure that there's no other issues.
Did you find certain drivers are more adept at the whole testing thing than others in terms of technical feedback and the sort of steering the way that they'd want that particular test to go?
Yeah, there's a huge difference with. I'm laughing because I'm thinking of Patrick Snires. I did a test with Patrick in the Mini, and the only thing that mattered was this. Was it faster or not? It doesn't for him. He was of an era, I think, that it didn't matter. He drove so many difficult cars, I think, that it didn't matter how difficult the car was or the change that you made was. Was it faster or not? And if it was faster, we keep it. And if it was slower, we don't keep it.
Very binary.
It was in one way it was a very straightforward test, but I was not prepared for that at all. I would have wrote the test plan a bit differently, I think, if I had known that. But yeah, there's a huge difference with the feedback from the drivers. There's a big difference with how quick they get up to speed as well, because there's a lot of good drivers out there, that get going on a Saturday evening or a Sunday, and they're hammering in the times because they have the mileage now and they have the confidence. But by then, maybe the guys that have done more pre-event testing, or they're just a bit sharper out of the box because of who they are. They've already pulled ahead, and it becomes a game of risk. Then how much risk do you want to take to try to catch back the time that you lost in the morning?
Yeah.
So there's a big difference with that, and for sure with the feedback as well. Some drivers are very sensitive to different things. Some drivers have no feeling and don't care about how the steering feels. So the steering rack and the weight of the steering, and some drivers are extremely sensitive to it. And
I always found that so fascinating, the way it completely flips from driver to driver and almost era to era as well.
Yeah. It's a trick. Steering and steering weight is an interesting one, because you can say as an engineer, oh, there's no time in it. You can there's no time in it, and we can test 5 different things. But the thing with the rally driver is, you could bring 5 different racks with 5 different feelings and 5 different pumps as well, and you could build all these different systems, and you could prove that there's no time in it. But by then the rally driver has adapted anyway. Like we saw, maybe we said it before, but like we saw in testing, 1 spare and 2 spare, we often put 2 spares in at the end of the day just to remind them how it feels when the time was identical, because they knew the roads so well. They just, after the first corner, they already adapted to the weight distribution and the inertia, and they just made up for it. And you can say the same about the steering, and it depends on the driver, how he's going into the corner. So your driver that's a little bit more sideways, he's not relying on the steering. He's relying on lateral grip and feeling and throttle and tires. And the other drivers, let's say the more modern style, is to you're doing a lot more on the front axle, and their steering feel, of course, becomes more important then, because they get everything back from it. But that's a whole steering is a whole different topic again. a big topic. But I suppose there's probably more to talk about on the Clubman level. But you kind of get the idea. You need to be, you don't have that much mileage. You need to be smart with the mileage that you have. It's good to have a small test plan in place. It all depends on your driver and how much feedback he has and how quickly he can remember what the car feels like from before. And then if we switch over then to the professional level, you can probably subcategorize that again into 2 different things then. So development testing and pre-event testing. Which one do you want to go first, Gillian?
I suppose you may as well start with the development testing, as it seems like the most logical choice. Yeah, it is, I think, in some ways then. So like this will start back at the factory with your build spec for your car, and you go to either the departments come to you, or you go to the departments and say, what's new, what are we running, and you start to build up an understanding of
parts are going to be on the car and what they're looking for. You know, is it performance or is it mileage? You know, and if it's mileage, you need to keep, you know, the one part on the car the whole time, you know, and try to get as much mileage as possible on that particular one. If it's performance, you know, you need to have some spares in case you break whatever it is, and put another one on because you want to answer the question and evaluate the performance level. Engine wise, it's always good to talk to the engine department because, you know, if you have an engine guy on your test, he's doing his own thing, not necessarily always communicating what he's doing, but maybe he is, you know, playing around with ignition and adding horsepower, and you all of a sudden your small change that you did with your damper clicks or your springs starts to look, ooh, I just found you know, a 0.1, 0.2 seconds a K there. That's interesting. And maybe he's just done it with the engine. So yeah, communication is good there. And it also gives them a heads up, you know, if they have got some changes, you need to keep that in mind and they want to try something, you know, towards the end of the day, towards the end of maybe the week that you're testing, because, you know, there's some risk involved with it and you don't want to blow an engine on the first day. You might as well do it on the last run of the last day. But yeah, just to keep in touch with them for what they're doing and, you know, try to squeeze them in as well. You know, if you're doing a endurance run or a mileage run on tires and you're not doing any changes, then that's the perfect time for them to try something that they want to do. Yeah, we spoke about then, you know, is it performance or is it yeah, do you need mileage on the parts? Is it for durability? And durability wise, yeah, maybe the part already has come from a previous test, so it's good to know the mileage already on it.
Mm-hmm.
You'll have to find that information out anyway for your report afterwards, so it's good to have all that information first of all. And either what I found, if you had the time, what's really good is to go to the designer or go to the project leader and try to get an overview, and not just have a list and smash all these parts on the car, but to have an understanding of what you're trying to do, what you're trying to achieve, because for sure that will grow into more questions on how to do the test. Then, you know, the test road is of course important when it comes to durability as well. If you're in a professional team in the World Championship, they will already have some of their favorite roads. You know, Fougeaucoust in France is really rough, and everyone goes there for durability with their new cars at the beginning, at least. And it's quite rough. You know, it's more than most stages. But it also depends on the driver that you take there, because, you know, I know when they took Ogier there, he didn't brake so much because he was driving around the rocks. And then they took some other drivers and they broke much more things. So they were much better development drivers, because sometimes you want to break things at least early in the development, because you want to know where the weak points are.
Need to find the limits.
Yeah, there's that old saying that you put the stickers on the door and then then everything breaks and you find out all the problems. But yeah, you try to find as much out as you can, you know, beforehand. And you need an aggressive driver for that sometimes too.
Professionally old school an approach as well, you know, in terms of quite a throwback. The old methods are still the best way.
Yeah, you can simulate all you want, you know, but in the end, and like the R5 car was a good example. We tested it a lot in some really rough conditions. I mean, we had enough budget to take it to Mexico after the rally, so that the stages were already, you know, cut up and rough, and we broke a lot of stuff over there. But when we sold the car and gave it to the customers, they found some new things that we never did, you know. And I don't know if it was from cutting corners more or bigger rocks, but you know, there was definitely some new problems that we never ever came across. And you know, when you say to customers that I haven't seen this before, they always throw their eyes up to heaven saying, yeah, I've heard that one before. But at least in the Polo R5 case, it was a genuine one. But I know what they were saying from other teams. But yeah, you need to do the mileage. You know, that's where you'll find it all out. And you know, exhaust temperature, for example, can influence so many other things. what happens when a puncture break, when you get a puncture, that's you don't test for that normally, but you should, because what happens then? Does your differential collapse then because it has, it doesn't have enough preload, or does it overheat because it's too much slipping? Or, should you warn the team, if you've had a puncture, that you really need to watch out on your gearbox temperature? Those kind of things, you can think beyond or outside the box of what you would normally do. So yeah, like you say, the old-fashioned way is the best. Mileage. And then performance-wise with development, yeah, this is a big topic, I guess. Here, your time is really valuable. You have let's say you have a 4-day test planned. It's really expensive, to go there. It doesn't matter which country or wherever, but you need, if it's a performance test, you need your engineers on site, and you need the answers quickly for a direction, because you can write a test plan, but if you discover something interesting with, a new subframe or a new geometry, or then you're better to pause your test plan and start to, go a little bit deeper down the rabbit hole there. But with that, you don't have, you can't wait for the evening to go through the data yourself and find the answers. So you need performance engineers there to try to help you to get the answer quickly, to make the next step, with an educated guess of what else could be interesting with it. So that's, yeah, from a performance test point of view, that's one of the things where it changes a lot. On the development test, it's mileage and documentation. That's a lot of the job. And of course, as the car gets faster and it gets later in its life, the car is running, for 2-3 days without any problems and stopping, then you start to automatically go. The driver will lead you there very quickly, whether you want to go there or not, because he'll start to want to change the car.
Yeah. So when you go to this 4-day test, the big test, performance test, what sort of kind of manpower and equipment can be expected to be to land on to the given location, country, stage, etc. In terms of personnel and support equipment and vehicles? How big an operation is that for a big team?
You need 4 to 5 good mechanics, and really good mechanics. And testing is, a little bit different to rallies. Rallies, they have a couple of services a day, and otherwise there's less to do. But in testing, if you're doing differential testing with any of the previous 3 generations for their mechanical front and rear differential, it's gearbox out, diff out, so and if you're doing that, you're doing, you can be doing 5, 6, 7, 8 times a day, dropping the subframe, dropping the gearbox. If you have 2 gearboxes on a professional level, you should, and you'll be rotating and swapping them back in and out. But some gearboxes, it's faster to change the one that's in, to leave the gearbox in the car and open it from the side and drain the oil and put your diff in and out from there. So yeah, mechanics wise, you need 4 to 5 good guys. You need a good engine guy, you need a good transmission guy, you need a good damper guy. If you're rebuilding dampers or changing dampers there yourself, if you're doing it internally as a company, or if you're doing it with a technical partner, if you're doing it with a technical partner, they'll often come with their own support truck there. And that's kind of takes care of itself. Then you need, with your truckies, at least one of them will be a good tire guy. And you need to be, if you're trying to document, tire wear or problems on the tire, or pressures as well. If you're exploring with the pressures, then you need a good guy on that, because you don't have the time to do all of this yourself. If you want to run an efficient test, you're probably looking at 10 to 12 runs a day. 12 would be good, I would say. If you're starting at 8, the road is closed then. If it's a tarmac road, the road can be busy. It's a little bit less efficient, so you might be looking at maybe only 9 runs a day. It depends then if you want to do long runs, because of tires or because of temperatures. You'll lose some more runs there as well. So yeah, it's a little bit a little bit more intense, I would say. And planning is very important, because as soon as the car is gone, then you need to be organizing the next change. At least get the guys in order. So, okay, it's, now we're going to be, that differential needs to come out, so let's prepare the other gearbox again, but the wrong ramp is in there now, you need to change it. Same for suspension, you need to prepare all the guys. It doesn't mean that you could cancel that change because you found something interesting and you want to evolve from the last one that you did, but at least you start to prepare, and then get your guys in the routine of putting the same amount of fuel in every time to keep all the consistencies. Same with the tires. If you're, well, I don't know, with performance testing, we were probably rotating maybe 3 sets of tires, so that if you don't rotate your tires, then your tire wear is going down, and then you put a new set of tires on, and it fucks all your results again, because you almost need to do a base run because the tire is too good.
Mm-hmm.
So you're better to wear down 3-4 sets of tires slowly, and your changes are far more effective then, because you're if you consider your sets A, B, C, and D, then you can compare run 1, 2, 3, and 4, because tires A, B, and C, and D had all the same mileage at the time. And when you get into the rotation, then they've cooled down a little bit, so it's always the same. With that, it depends on your driver as well, because sometimes if you get a puncture and you have to put a new tire on, or you have to replace it, if you have a driver that's able to tell you, that change is better, but it could be because we have a new front left on that on that corner because of the puncture or whatever. So you can't think of everything all the time yourself either, so you need help from the driver sometimes too on that point of view. Performance is probably it's one of the more interesting jobs. The rally engineer, it's nice to be on rallies and to compete, but if you have a big appetite for learning, it's the best fun is on the test, because that's where you can do some crazy stuff, and that's where the learning really. You shouldn't really be learning on the rally, because then it means that you've crashed and you're testing. You shouldn't really be doing any of that on the rally. If you're well prepared and you've got a good car and your championship is going well, then you should be doing all of that.
Is it
so that's probably it.
Sorry, I was going to say, is it fair to say that on performance testing you're more likely to get for want of a better word, a eureka moment in terms of pursuing a development angle that just come to light? Presumably that's when you're more likely to get something that just clicks, or at least some sort of potential exploratory avenue.
Exactly. Yeah, that's kind of what I mean by that. You stumble across something and you want to pause the test plan for a little bit and we're going to do 2 or 3 runs here now, and we're going to explore this a little bit more. And you can be wrong, but you can understand why you're wrong maybe later and get back on your test plan again. But if you're right, it's worth remembering and documenting. And when you have more time to look at the data of why that was interesting or why that was better, you can learn from it, and not forget it for another time. But yeah, I think that with those things, the thing with development testing, someone said to me once that the design of the car, once it's done, it's not that the speed is fixed on the car, but you can only find so much afterwards with pre-event testing. With setup on a rally car, maybe you'll find 0.5 second decay. And I think there's a lot of, after a few more years under my belt, I think there's a lot of truth in that, I think. So like we found out with the RX-1E, the Polo, the first run with a driver that has, a professional driver that you trust and has good feedback, the first run is so important. How they come back, and you kind of get a feeling if you've got a winner or not. There's really a lot of truth in it. The rest of it, set up and and that kind of thing, you know, pre-event test and stuff, that's optimizing what you have, understanding what you have and optimizing what you have. But at least during the development process, you have an opportunity to change that, whether it's, you know, suspension geometry or weight distribution, or, you know, or whatever, you know. But your damper clicks, your roll bars, and your ride height, and your springs, this is more understanding and more, you know, extracting the most you can out of your car for your event or for your rally. But it's definitely where it's the most interesting, you know. And if you've got a team that's running well and well ahead, then it starts to get really interesting, because they're not blocked by problems, because the car is running, and you get more mileage on the test, and you're freer to think about, you know, you're not stressed about fixing this problem or that problem. You're freer to think about
the next stage.
You know,
looking on the road, as it were.
Yeah, exactly. You know, we have a problem with this. How could we solve it? You know, and then some guys come up, you know, back at the factory with some wacky ideas, and you try it. You know, that's when it starts to be really cool, really interesting.
I was just about to say, I can imagine from an engineer's point of view, that must be manna from heaven, that ability to have the freedom to do that.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I mean, you can't every day can't be like that, of course, but you know, preparation back at the factory with if it's a component or a part or whatever, you know, that's important. If you have the time, it's always better to trial fit the part first of all, because, you know, if it's I don't know, you know, a new prop shaft, for example, and it's a bit lighter or whatever, and if you haven't trial fitted it and you go and drop the exhaust, the mechanics are already a bit annoyed at you because everything's stinking hot, and then you offer up the new prop shaft and it doesn't fit. Yeah, you won't be so popular. So, you know, I think those kind of things come with experience as well. You know, there with organizing your days back at the factory to try and minimize your time down. Yeah, you know, your downtime on the test, and maximize your runs.
How long does it take to come up with the test plan? If you're back at the factory or whatever it is, and you say, right, this is the performance test that's coming up, our goal is A, B, and C. You sit down then to develop your test plan. What sort of work goes into that then?
There might be some things already on the list from, you know, a previous year or a previous plan. You know, okay, Mexico altitude could be a problem. You know it from the previous year, but you're not going to go starting testing straight away directly after Mexico. But you know, we need to find somewhere in Europe, and we need to test in high altitude conditions because we had cooling problem or whatever. And you know, so those kind of things, that they might be the main reason that you're going there. That's the main goal then. But then you have a whole load of other stuff that you need. Like I said, you need mileage on, or it could be an interesting place to try this or try that or whichever. So some of the things on the list will automatically be there with a couple of months, and then the other stuff can come, you know, weeks or months in advance. The development tests were probably, depends on I don't know what the mileage is now that they're allowed. But you know, you could do easily between 1 and 2 a month, you know, with some breaks in between. So if you're doing 2 a month, you know, it's a bit hectic. You have only 2 weeks to prepare from one to the other. If you've only one test car, which often is the case because you want the most mileage on the components, then it's a case of re-prepping the car. Maybe it has a lot of damage, you know, especially gravel test cars, they get beaten up pretty hard. And at one point you have to pause and stop and, you know, get a new body shell or try to repair the body shell you have. So you need to try and squeeze that into your calendar as well then. And then depending on how organized all your departments are, they usually come to you with the information. So they already have the information from the project leader. You know, this part needs to be designed, you need to order it, and it needs to be manufactured ASAP. And then the designer will come to you and say, okay, you know, the trucks leave on Tuesday and Monday we get a part. And then you say, okay, what part is it? And then you might realize, okay, it's worth keeping the car from, you know, late. Keep the car, don't load the car yet. We'll do a trial fitment of this part rather than losing downtime on the test. It I think how organized all the departments are and how your systems are in place can help you a lot, or else you have to do all the work and go around to the departments to find out the information. You'll have, or your project leader will also tell you, what's happening and what you need to do and how you need to test it, or what you're looking for from a component, with the testing. So then that's probably the, let's say, development testing. And from a performance point of view, pre-event testing, that's quite nice, because you're there with your rally driver that you're always working with, so you already know him quite well, and you should have a good understanding of your rallies by then.
Mm-hmm.
So you know your kilometers for the loop, and you know how many tires you have for the rally, so your tire plan has already begun well before the rally. And this you should be discussing with your driver, and you might have some experience from the past, or he might have some experience to say, that particular stage is back in now, it's been out for 5 years, it's really rough, or it's really hard on tires, or so there's always, or maybe none of you have the information, but you can find out
Mm-hmm.
from old videos or something that it is a nightmare on tires. So that can help to build you a picture, and then you already know where you might need to carry 6 tires.
Mm-hmm.
or maybe it's just there's no reason to carry 6, and then your test should be always 5 tires. So it kind of start with that, and then your test road, of course, is crucial. How many days you have. If it's gravel testing, your position in the championship, if you're leading in the championship and you have to sweep the road for a full day or for a full morning, that's really difficult for your testing, because within 2 or 3 runs the road is already quite clean. So like Ogier was had a quite difficult year in 2015, where he was leading for 2 days, opening the road for 2 days, and that meant then that his first runs on the test roads that he had became so important, because 2/3 of his rally was made up with leading the road, having this road position. And Sunday was often okay for him. Sunday seemed to be still, as long as he was within a fighting grasp Saturday evening, somehow he came out all guns blazing Sunday morning, and sometimes was still able to do the job. But normally that's not the case, and it's quite difficult to do. So yeah, you're for gravel, and it's the same for tarmac actually as well, because for development testing, I would tell the driver, don't cut the road at all, because you want consistency. And if you start cutting the corners, then you bring out gravel, and then every time you pass through, it's a slightly different corner.
Adding another variable, I suppose.
Yeah, but the reality of that is, unless you're first on the road, you're going to be cutting the corners, and the road is going to be dirty and polluted. So it's a little bit of a mix and match. You can. What I used to do was, do the first half of the morning consistent, no cuts, and then the second half to make it a bit more realistic for the rally, and to start to cut the corners. And you have to keep an eye on your rally video there, because your driver will tell you, I'm not cutting the corners at all, but
straight in.
It's just in their nature. They can't. They have to fight. They have to fight so hard to.
They're drawn to it. Drawn into it.
Sounds like you have to play the role of benevolent school teacher half the time.
Babysitter, I call it. Yeah, but but those things, you can get caught up on your data, staring at data all day, and your performance engineer can also do that, but they should have a quick look at the onboard video every now and again, because you might find all your answers to all your problems on the video, because you can't see gravel, you can't see a polluted road on the on the data. You just see tire slip, or big yaw angle or whatever. So yeah, it's good to keep an eye on your onboard video too. But yeah, going back to the pre-event test then, so have a good understanding of your tires and your tire wear, understand your rally. By that I mean your kilometers and your loops. Maybe you have some information from the past, which soft versus hard, or cross, or whatever. Maybe you've done something, maybe your driver has done something, or maybe maybe you got beaten by someone the previous year on a cross tire choice that you need to be able to drive now. Your driver may have never driven cross tires before, and it's not so easy. They need to remember where the soft is on the front left or the front right or whatever. So they need to get used to that as well, and it can give quite a strange feeling on the car with braking and stuff. So yeah, and then 5 tires or 6 is a good one to also to cover. If you have a good understanding of your rally and you know that it's going to be really rough, or that everyone is going to be taking 6 tires because you won't survive without it, then yeah, that 2 tires need to be in the boot from the beginning. There's no point, there's no point in just putting it in at the very end, because you've set up your car with 5, and for sure it feels a little bit different when you put the 6th one in.
On the subject of tires, and a slight tangent, how much of a recent, maybe a headache might be a strong word, but with the recent switch from Michelin to Pirelli in the World Rally Championship, how much of a headache or a bit of an irritation would that have been for an engineer doing a test, given that all your data over the last many years would have been based on going to a location and using your Michelins?
Yeah.
Or would it pose much of a headache at all? Or do you say, well, look, the tire will be up to a similar standard and we can expect very similar results from it, but also will the carcass temperature and stuff be very different, and will it wear differently despite what the manufacturer says and what they've laid out? Or am I just chasing a dead end there? But I imagine you would have a lot of data from.
Yeah, you're right. It's a. But I wouldn't say it's a pain in the ass. Because if you're running, for example, Michelin's for 4 years, by then everyone knows the tire well. Either they've done their homework or they found out the hard way, but they all know. They all know how the tire works. They know the tire pressure to start with on a short stage or a long stage. They know, and the drivers have a really good feeling of the puncture risk with the tire, how protective the sidewall is, what they can do, how much abuse the tire can take. So it's not that it gets boring, but everyone has kind of come to the same answers. So when a new tire comes, at least I would look at it as an opportunity, to get to know the tire better than the next guy. And yeah, I think that's the way the engineer should be looking at it. The driver might complain or whatever, but in the end, everyone has the same tires, so you should look at it as an opportunity to try to learn as much as you can and put some things in the pocket basically for your races. That's a lot what your pre-event test is doing. If you're doing it right, if you understand your rally well beforehand and things, you're basically putting some things in the pocket that you can use later. So that it's no stress and no surprises. If you're running 2 tires that you need to change, 2 spares, you need to change the setup. But maybe the car loses a lot of grip then. So maybe it's 5 tires in the morning is the best choice, and the driver needs to accept that he only has 1 spare, so he needs to drive accordingly, because he's not willing to take the extra weight penalty and the extra inertia on the rear, because of the nature of the road in the first loop, where there's more cleaning involved. So, but then in the second pass, it's automatically better grip, so the tire wear goes up, and it's also automatically more rocks exposed, so the puncture risk has gone up. So then it's then it should be 6 in the afternoon. But you need to drill that into the driver so that he doesn't start coming up with any wacky ideas on the rally, because that's where you go wrong. That
I guess that's where you need.
That's where the babysitter has to come back, and you have to try to negotiate. I mean, there's always a good reason for changing the plan sometimes, but sometimes there is some very bad reasons. Because someone else has gone with 5, doesn't mean you should. You've done your pre-event test. You know that there's a puncture risk, so you need to stick to your plan. And if you're wrong, you're wrong. Okay, then for next year. But yeah, that's where emotion comes in and overrules all the work that you've done. And that can become challenging too. But yeah, and then with setup, like I say, to have a good understanding, that they'll never come back and say, or sometimes they'll come back and say it's undrivable, but it's probably not undrivable. You just need to get to work, and you're a bit too far away. You're too stiff or whatever. You're too soft, and it's rolling too much. And then you need to make a big step at the very beginning. So if they come back and say it's undrivable, it's probably too stiff and they can't generate any grip. So yeah, you need to make it's not just a case of a damper click. Then you need to maybe do quite a big step on the car, whether it's ride height or springs and roll bars or whatever. But I think if you know the rallies and know your car well, you'll be there or thereabouts with your first guess for your first pass setup, let's say for your morning loop. That helps a lot, because then you can really concentrate on the smaller details. If you're spending the morning and the afternoon still trying to find your setup and your balance, and you haven't done any tire testing, that's a problem then, because you're completely on the back foot. And you can really hear this, I think, with some, you can see it in the driver comments at the end of the stages. The drivers that haven't had a pre-event test, they're doing multiple runs on shakedown, and they're still off the pace. And Friday is going to be a bit hairy if you get through it, because they're already frustrated. They don't have the mileage that the other guys have. They can't make it up on a shakedown. And shakedown pace you shouldn't underestimate it. Shakedown pace becomes, they're still drivers and they still want to beat each other. So the pace becomes quite high sometimes. That's why sometimes there's some stupid accidents and stuff on the shakedown, and it's just literally just a shakedown, but it's not, and then, you'll get the comments on Friday. The shakedown's okay because the shakedown road matches the test road, but then the test road is wrong for the rally. That's where you get the Friday comments where they feel they've gone the wrong way with the setup.
Is it not representative of the rally?
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. And it's hard to say. You hear those comments a lot, and it's hard to say from the outside what it could be. But maybe your rally car has a small window, and you do need to work hard to get it in the window. If the car has a bigger window, for sure it helps much more. But it can be that you just went the wrong way. That the gravel road that you were testing on was evolving, and you just kept listening to your driver, and you kept going stiffer and stiffer because the grip is going up on the road. And that's fine, because your lap times or your stage times on your tests are getting better. Everyone feels great, but that's not pre-event testing. That's setting a time on a test road, and that's not your job, and that's not the rally driver's job either. So that's where it can go. That's where it can go wrong a lot. And that one you can hear. You can hear that comment, or you can read between the lines sometimes in the stage comments, and you can see that that's maybe what happened there.
The old reliable of no confidence in the front or rear or whatever it is. There's always insert end of car where applicable.
That can be, that's balance for sure. That's what they talk about, balance for the car. And then for sure, if they have the wrong balance, understeer, they don't like it, but it's not as slow as they think. And some corners, as we're finding out regularly in rallycross, some corners are faster if you drive them with understeer style, believe it or not. But of course, if you have a 40-kilometer Corsica stage with understeer, you're dead. You'll come to kilometer 22 or 25 and your fronts are overheated. God. And and then they're over driving for the last one, and it just gets worse and worse and worse and worse. So that's a different story about balance there. Balance and dialing out understeer is much more important on a rally like that. But yeah, when they look for balance, it's really important to them because it matches their driving style. And if they can't, it's the way that they, if you picture Yari Matti, for example, it's the way that he aggressively throws the car into the corner, and balance for him is crucial. It's really, really crucial. But of course, throughout a full 20-kilometer stage, in the middle of Wales in a forest, then you might go from one forest to another. and maybe the type of gravel or road changes. It goes from hard base to soft base, and your balance will change then because your grip has changed on the road. And if your car has a small window, then you might be okay on the first half, but you're out the window on the second half then. So it depends on your driver, what he likes when they talk about this word about balance. But I really do sympathize with them if they don't have what they're looking for, because it means they have to overdrive and they're out of their comfort zone. Then there's already risk coming from overdriving, because they have to be, in your understeer situation, they have to be more aggressive with the rear, but there's, risk comes with that, especially the more narrow the stage. And that's how accidents can also happen. So
they're worrying further along the road as well.
Yeah, but it's as we kind of talk about it, you also you can realize how important the pre-event test is. It's so critical. And your junior drivers that are trying to come up, and in the time that I was with Volkswagen, Andreas had only 1 day test, and the two main drivers had a 2-day test each. So you're really trying to maximize as much as you can in that day. And that's where the engineer is kind of coming in to his own to prepare the test and prepare each change as it goes along, so that the mechanics are as fast as possible. So that the downtime, because that last extra run or two that you can get in the day is so important then if he only has 1 day.
It sounds like it's very easy to fripper away a test session if you're not on the ball from an engineer's point of view. Yeah,
it really is. If it's, and you get annoyed because if it's running well and you get a problem, it completely fucks your day. And if you've planned to do some really important things in the evening with 2 spares or whatever, and you don't get to it, it's a problem. And then so then you haven't done your two spares thing. You need to do it on a shakedown, but they don't want to do it in shakedown. They want to set a fast time because they want to go into Friday night stages with a good feeling, and
everything compounds.
Yeah, because there's balls on the table, and there's a bit of bravado with the shakedown there as well. So
there's times going on the board. There's always going to be, there's times being posted.
Yeah, your world champions can sit back and look at it. They know their speed, and they can look at that time and they can say that's a good time, or that's a lot of risk. And they can be comfortable with their time and say, yeah, I hope he goes again, or because that's too much for me. But if you don't have that experience, I say world champions, but you know what I mean, like guys with a lot of experience, they have a really good feeling for what's the right time on that stage. And if someone takes 4 seconds out of you on a 2-minute 40 stage, then did I miss something in the notes here, or or is that a lot of risk, or is it a different tire or something else?
There's a driver springs to mind with quick shakedowns, but I won't actually mention them by name.
Go on.
No, I won't. I'm a coward. Just in case.
Just in case you need to invite him on next week.
Is Lewis Clement still coming on the podcast?
No.
Yeah, but it's an interesting one though, the pre-event testing. It's so much to do with the tires then, and it takes drivers a while to appreciate that, I think. They come and they want to change the setup completely, or they think they have a huge job to, we need to try every spring and every roll bar, and you don't. If you have good experience with the car, you shortcut all of that stuff. If you don't have good experience with the car, you need to, from the experience that you have, you need to guesstimate a good setup, and have planned some options up and down accordingly. If you have balance but you're too stiff, that's a good thing, because you can keep the balance. Some people use roll stiffness calculators to help with this, and they work really well. If it's an accurate roll stiffness calculator, it works really well. If you've got a driver that's very sensitive on balance, then yeah, you can work. It's really, really good to work with one. But if you have imbalance, that's a different thing. You might as well quickly try to find that balance, because otherwise that driver will be complaining the whole day. And he also can't really do his job because he can't drive how he wants. And then you'll be suffering on your inconsistency. So your times will be up and down and you don't learn anything. You could probably do a whole podcast on balance.
Next season.
Next season, yeah.
Yeah, maybe, yeah.
How do you have to find you spend much time trying to, well, I suppose, look, the times will show what the times will show, but an initial run to convince the driver saying, look, this is the way, and they've got a slight, where this is where feel comes into it, but as you say, feel doesn't necessarily indicate time. Trying to not bully them into saying this is the direction we want to take, but I presume you have to do quite a bit of convincing before putting them in the car at times.
Really,
depending on the driver, I guess.
Yeah, it really does depend on the driver and the personality. Yeah, you have to do it more, I'd say, on average with younger drivers. And if you have an older engineer and a younger driver, then they kind of automatically, there's a bit of faith and trust there, and that makes life easier for the younger driver. If the engineer has a lot of experience, you say, this setup is not you won't be far away with this. Let's do a few runs, let's find our balance, and then we'll start on our tires. But I think you can probably prepare all that stuff 1 week beforehand. You can talk to him already and you say, here's the rally itinerary, it's just been issued, here's my tire plan, this is what I think based on my experience. And then you can go over and back accordingly. And he, you might have missed something, like he can say, I don't want to carry 2 spares on any of the Saturday loop because there's too much altitude. I'll suffer going uphill and suffer going downhill. And that's a valid point then. So then you need to look accordingly, to try to make that work with 5. But when it comes then, if you've got let's say a more experienced driver, could be a difficult driver, that's a bit more difficult then, because he's very headstrong, he's got his own ideas, and to try and keep them on track, it can be more challenging for sure. Either they want to do their own things with the setup, which is fine, but you need to have it planned. It needs to fit in with the test. And if you know what this is what he kind of is, then you might do 8 runs yourself and leave 3 free for him to go and try something. But then you need to quickly get back on track again. And I think it's the same with the tires. You need to be on the same wavelength with the tires. That's the first thing, I think, and the rest will follow. But if you get them thinking about the tires early on, then they're always, when they talk about setup, they're talking about setup in relation to tires, not just feeling, not just anything else. And I think that's maybe the best advice is, because in the end, it's the thing that matters the most. If you're on the wrong tire, you're fucked. If you're overheating the tire, you're fucked. If you've got no thread left, you're fucked. So
I think we just found our new merch T-shirt. There we are. That's it. It's the new black ram for everything.
Yeah. So it changes the way you will see with with a younger driver that starts to change when you see them get it, when they understand it, and they have to learn the hard way. They're fast in the first 2 stages and they've killed their 4 softs and they've nothing left for the last 2 stages. Then they have to sometimes learn the hard way, and then their next approach to the next breathing test is much better. Sometimes it has to just be like that. They don't just always listen to you like our children. They have to find out for themselves, and but sometimes it's better they find out for themselves because they don't forget them.
Yeah,
I don't remember everything that everyone told me, but if you've made some mistakes, for sure you remember them a bit more. So
certainly drives it home.
Yeah. But yeah, pre-event testing. I don't know. We've covered a lot, I guess, a bit scattered over and back.
In terms of like locations, is there any particular event stood out for you, kind of going like this place will be particularly challenging on a as an event, and therefore the pre-event test would have to take on another kind of mindset or level in terms of, or even replicating the event on the pre-event test, like finding the test road that can effectively be the test road.
Yeah. So like your local drivers, like, where they're from, they will always advise you on the best roads in their country. You can imagine Yadi-Matti in Finland pre-event test, he has all the best roads and booked them well in advance. And so, there's that helps you a lot. Let's say the other example I could give then, so when Rally Portugal went from the south back up to the north, none of the drivers have ever driven in the north at that time. So what we did, I did actually, I went to look for 3 days to look at the rally, first of all the new stages. So drove all the stages with our test coordinator, and then we went to drive like 20 or 22 test roads, and we tried to classify them, with regards width, speed, hard base or soft base, rocky or puncture risk or whichever. And then looking at the stages and looking at the test roads, you try to come up with either a matrix if there was too many to try to figure out, or you already had a good, from what you saw, you had a good idea. Okay, these 6 roads are pretty realistic for the rally, and you can forget about all the others because there's something wrong with every one of them. Or you might find the best test road in the world, but you can't get the trucks up there. The trucks are too far away, and then that makes your tests not very efficient because you're losing time commuting over and back.
That must be
so yeah, it's good to do your homework. I think like Volkswagen, I guess with this, we were new to rally. There was people with rally experience, but a lot of people without a lot of WRC experience. Whereas you can imagine at M Sport, they probably had quite a few people that remember the rally in Portugal and in the north. So that could also have a big influence. They might already remember some of the best test roads from before, but yeah, it's the best example to talk about that question, I think, because that rally had a reputation in the south for being a car breaker because it had a lot of bedrock. So you had a lot of steering rack issues, a lot of drive shaft issues, bolts coming loose, subframes coming loose. It was really aggressive on the car. But the north, from Escort Cosworth days, I guess, this also was quite a famous rally in the north, a different characteristic. And the rally that we went to, actually, the rally that they made was very, very different to the old. They used some of the stages. I think Saturday Loop was some of the old stages, but otherwise a lot of the stuff was, using access roads for wind turbine farms. And then you had the Fafe rally. You had those stages on the Sunday, which were completely different to Saturday and Friday. So it was quite tricky to categorize the rally and then try to categorize the test roads, with all, basically, for me, it was all brand new. And the rally was a success. I don't remember if the test was a success or not. They were never happy anywhere, our guys. They were always but I think it was okay. I think the test roads were not so bad in the end. But yeah, tarmac is a little bit easier in one way, but to try to categorize, if you find a test road that's too abrasive and you're killing tires all day, and you planned only 3 sets, but they're already done by 2 p.m., 3 p.m., then yeah, you've got the wrong test road, and you've probably been led down the garden path because you've kept going stiffer with the car because the road has so much grip. And then you come to the rally or you come to the shakedown even, and it's already, you're way off, So for sure, the nature of the asphalt is important. Trying to figure out, if it's a big, like sharp stone, with not so much traffic over it, which means it stays quite sharp, or if it's a big stone but polished from a lot of heavy equipment or a lot of traffic over it, that the big stone still brings good grip, but if it rains, it's
Nice.
because you've got that polished nature, it's much more difficult. So it's a tricky one, tarmac and gravel, to try and find the right roads, but experience is a lot of it, and the drivers will also tell you a lot of it. They could also tell you straight away that the test road is wrong on the first run, and then you might have to go to we've had that before, where they said, this is not right, and you're better then to go to your test coordinator. What else do you have locally? And you're better to cancel what you're on and make the best of, try to move everything, trucks and personnel. He might have quite valid reasons for it. It's too narrow, or it's too slow, or too twisty, or whatever. You can also get it wrong. Maybe you had no choice in the matter, with the test road. Maybe it's
weren't able to get the closure.
Yeah, but they can say, we're wasting our time here. There's no point. We should it's better to look for something else than to drive here. And that's fair enough. Then you have to pack up everything and start looking and move. You may be a case, everything is planned and everything's going well, but you're relying on the local police to keep the road closed. But they can also be called away on an emergency.
That's the kind of variable you just can't plan for.
The same for the ambulance. If you're doing proper testing and you're closing roads, properly, not necessarily, the more relaxed routine that I've seen in the past.
It still happens.
Oh, I know, but it's I don't know. I don't really agree with it. It's too much at stake. But if you have an ambulance there and the ambulance gets called away because it's the most local one, then you have to stop the test. For the driver's sake, he'll want to drive still, but he'll say, it's fine, everything's okay, but you have a responsibility and you have to stop the test.
How about
do something?
Sorry, go on. Sorry, Kieran.
No, you can maybe do something else. You could do launch testing or something like this. But you have to be, from a safety point of view, you should stop the testing.
How about weather and other sort of variables like that? Is it a case of just rolling with the punches if it decides to bucket it down?
You'll when you're looking at planning your test, you can already, the test engineer, if he has his 3-day test, 3 drivers coming, 1 driver each day, you'll already have looked at the weather, because you will have to mount some tires in the factory already. If you have a tire machine on event, that's even better. You can be a bit flexible, but if you don't, or you don't have the space to carry it, then you need to mount everything on rims beforehand, and then you need to cover yourself, in case it's going to be wet or not. And that's tricky then, because if the weather is mixed, it's it's better to find the space for the tire machine then, or else you need to bring another trailer and put more rims and tires on it. But if it's raining, I think it's always a good thing. You pause everything and you say, okay, we've had this in our, on our job list for a long time to do a wet test. So now we're going to tick this question, and this question off. What if we do this? What if we do that? We need to try those things. So you can go straight to that. You'll have an ongoing maybe wet test list on your own laptop or in your head, or maybe the driver will. So you need to make use of it. The thing with that is, it's a lot to do with the driver feedback there, because if it's like scattered showers, it's never consistent. It's never absolutely perfectly wet all over the road, from the beginning to the end of the test. So you have to, it's a lot about the driver there to tell you, how it's working, if it's working well or not, but it is a realistic rally situation where you're driving in and out of, damp conditions, wet conditions, or whatever. So it's a good thing to do. You can forget to find the perfect setup. You should probably forget to find the perfect setup for a rally car, because it's, if you look at the nature of rally and gravel or tarmac or snow, the road changes too much. It's the perfect setup is doesn't exist. You need the best compromise, really.
Yeah.
I'd imagine like New Zealand this year must have thrown a right spanner in the works for the teams, because the way the road changed so quickly, there's surely no way they could have had any sort of approximation of those conditions on their test for New Zealand, and no one expected those conditions either going in.
I read somewhere that one of the WRC teams had heavily graded some test roads for the banked feeling. Whether it's true or not, I don't know. It's a good idea if you have that budget to do it. Maybe so. Which drivers would have had experience down there? Ogier drove down there, I think.
Yeah, and he drove there 2015.
Yeah.
No, yeah, he also nearly won there with Citroen, didn't he?
Yeah.
And there wouldn't have been.
Was Danny probably? Danny must have driven down there.
But he didn't go to New Zealand with Hyundai this year, did he?
Oh, didn't he? Okay.
I don't think so. I don't think that was one of his events. So yeah, basically no one. I mean, the same would go for Japan now as well, although the last Japan wasn't tarmac.
No,
it wasn't. It was gravel. 2012, wasn't it?
Gravel,
yeah. So
it's if you have that kind of a budget to grade the roads so that they have this banked feature, fantastic. If not, it becomes difficult.
What do you do? Yeah.
I think if someone has experience, to say what's the closest, what's the closest location, you should still go there, because even if the roads are not up to speed, you should go as late as possible to the event so that the drivers are sharp and fresh, that they're used to the speed. The closer they can be, the closer the test, especially Finland. This one, they were pushing and pushing and pushing. The other rallies up, Poland also, they wanted to push the pre-event test so close to the event. It was like, the recce was Monday and the pre-event test was finished on a Sunday or a Saturday. And none of the other tests were like that. But because the speeds were so high, they needed that
match fitness.
Yeah, that whatever they get from it, this sharpness or reaction or feeling, or they get something from it. It was really important to them to be as close as possible. So like when you see how much they push that point forward, and then you take that point, go back to your clubman who does a 50 kilometer test, pre-event test, and he does 4 rallies a year. It's difficult for him to get up to speed. So people are harshly judging different drivers. Oh, he's the car is too good for him, or he's not fast enough, or whatever. But it's not easy, is it? If it was easy, we'd all be doing it.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, Richard, I think you've given us a great coverage there of PET and testing in general.
It's been absolutely superb, genuinely fascinating.
As one we really did want to cover for it, and as you could branch off so many different topics with it almost as well if you had the time.
But it is it's rarely spoken about, but actually it's really nice to go on a proper test. If you've good car, it doesn't matter if it's development test or if it's a pre-event test. Pre-event test is nice, I think, because the competition is coming. But you have the freedom to test all the different things and prepare for your rally, and put some things in the pocket that you can use later. Maybe you find something on the test that's not for that rally but for another rally, and you put it in the pocket for then.
Keep it for another time.
Yeah, exactly.
Jamie, before we wrap up, have you any points that you wanted to touch on before we start to land this plane?
No, I'm all good. That was thoroughly comprehensive. I really enjoyed it. Thank you very much.
Oh, you're welcome. Yeah. It's always nice to talk about rally, even if I'm in rallycross at the moment. But you can now with Ola Christian.
Your heart lies.
We have Ola Christian Baby in the team, and Johan, so the conversation really quickly goes back to rally.
I bet. Yeah, two really talented guys. They must be pretty good to work with.
Yeah, they're really good guys. Yeah, really good. And Ola Christian, he did some rallycross a long time ago. He's done a lot of rallies since then, but he's jumped into the RX1E car now, and he's straight on the pace. And it's good to see. It's nice. All of them. They've all got podiums this year. Yeah, just Ola Christian now and Gustav Bergstrom. They need to jump on the top step of the podium. Hopefully,
Yeah,
that would be nice. Now there's only one round left, so let's see.
Jamie and I saw Ola Christian at Rally Legend a couple of weeks ago. And
yeah, he showed me some onboard video of that.
I'd say that's quite something.
Yeah, he said it was without a doubt by far the most enjoyable weekend he has ever done.
It's good fun.
Yeah. He said it was so welcoming, so relaxed, and the more show you put on, the more you got back from the crowd and the organizers.
Yeah.
It was fantastic. Yeah,
it's a pretty special atmosphere there, and those S1 supercars as well at night when you 4 glowing brake discs and blue flames and the ALS on them at the start line is Yeah.
He said what was interesting was he said like the drivability of that car and the drivability on the throttle is absolutely fine for rallycross, perfect for a track. But he said you put the same car there, so it was the same car, just a co-driver seat, 18-inch wheels and Pirelli tires, and he said the same car, the same throttle, the same response. It was not undrivable, but it was just too much for a rally stage, because then things are pushing 600 horsepower and a whole load of torque, and wow, they are proper fast. They're Group B plus.
I'd say you're really trying to rein it in. You can probably get too easily carried away with it on a road like that, I'd imagine.
I think he had a different plan at the weekend, though. It was just maximum angle and maximum fun.
Yeah, well, definitely. Yeah, there's a lot of angles there.
They ran out of tires there.
Actually, I did notice. I think was it him who went missing on the Sunday loop.
Yeah.
So
No tires left. Yeah.
It seems to be a regular occurrence for people who come to that event the first time, or they bring tarmac tires and not gravel tires. If they're in something else, they need to bring the gravel tires. That the crowd don't want smooth and quick. They want very sideways.
I must go there next year if it doesn't clash with any event or something like that. I must make a point to go with some of the boys from home and stuff. It looks fantastic.
Yeah.
And even for the guys supporting, they said it's like the old days with chasing. You're running from stage to stage because they need tires and fuel again.
Yeah, it kind of added a kind of romantic aspect to it when you're driving up into the next stage. You see the kind of the chase cars and roadside servicing and remote servicing and regroups, especially when there was guys in like period service vehicles as well. Have we gone wrong with the modern way of rallying? Oh, that's another debate. That's a dangerous.
I think you're about to segue into what's your favourite service barge, which is a good.
I do like a chase car. I was watching an old, I think it was Circuit of Ireland '96 lately, and I was quite taken with Liam O'Callaghan's chase car, a Corolla Estate XLI but it had the 3-spoke road wheels from a GT4. On the chase car. I don't know. That was just very perverted and weird to see, and it was really good though.
Do you remember all of Bertie's chase cars outside the Grand Hotel in Killarney?
I remember a photograph of that.
All the Subaru estates were lined up. I don't know. I don't remember if they were Legacies. No, they were Imprezas, I think. They were Impreza estates lined up. Maybe there was Legacy. Maybe an older year, but
there would have been Legacy. Somebody, I'd say they were predominantly Imprezas. Yeah.
That was nice.
I could definitely have another whole episode on chase cars, and I what's the coolest chase and recce vehicles from back in the day. But on that note, Richard, we'll end it there, and no doubt we'll catch up again soon sometime.
Yeah, good to talk to you guys. Yeah,
thanks for having me. Come back, mate.
And thanks everyone for listening to another episode of Rally DNA. See you again soon.